Hello there, I am going to be reviewing Within, the 2016 horror movie directed by Philip Clayton, who I've never heard of. He directed one other movie called like Lesbian Vampire Killers, so I don't know, maybe I'll have to check that out. But this movie Within is not great.
Nice.
You know, it's not pictures and furniture that make a home, it's the people living in it.
My friends want to know what it's like living here.
What do you mean?
You know how every neighborhood has that one creepy house?
Yeah.
Well, you're living in it.
I guess I'll start with the premise, just kind of the elevator pitch. It's basically extremely traditional, very cliche. It's a family moving into a suburban house because their dad got a new job, and the daughter starts thinking there's something up. The neighbor's creepy. Objects start moving on their own. Doors opening and closing. And then, you know, the parents don't believe her until shit keeps happening, and eventually they do believe her. And then, they confront, have a climax, and the movie's over. Sorry, that was supposed to be the elevator pitch. That ended up just being the whole movie, because it only takes 10 seconds to do. Yeah, extremely simplistic movie, very cliche. The cinematography is not good. There's two things I want to talk about. So the first is the color grade is so desaturated. It's like drained of all color, and it's a shame because some of the shots are actually pretty nice and like would look nice if it wasn't for this weird color grade. I don't know, they were probably trying to make some sort of artistic statement with that, but at the end of the day, if your movie looks like shit because of it, is it really worth it? And then what even is the statement there? Like, desaturated represents like all the colors out of the movie because the colors have gone out of this family's life. It's pretty thin. And then the other thing is, a lot of the shots are off-axis, which was weird to me, like, but only slightly off-axis, like not like a full Dutch tilt, like Battlefield Earth, is that what that movie's called, with John Travolta? It's not to that level, or like Thor, like the full Dutch tilt, but it's just like ever so slightly off axis, and like a ton of shots. And again, I don't even know if it's on purpose. It legitimately is right on the edge where it could be incompetence. But even if it is on purpose, again, what is that accomplishing? Like, you're trying to make your viewer uneasy by having all these shots slightly off, but it doesn't make me uneasy, it just makes me annoyed. Like, why can't you have your shots straight? You know what I mean? Fix your shit. Your tripod should have a level on it, and your camera should have a level on it too. There's no excuse. So that was pretty obnoxious, especially because, again, a lot of those shots looked nice for everything other than the color grade and the axis being off. So just weird choices, if they were choices. The acting, the acting's actually not that bad, I guess. Like, the main family, the father and the mother are fine. The daughter's not great, but not terrible. The neighbor, so they have this creepy neighbor who like introduces himself as a locksmith right at the beginning of the movie, and he is just super over the top, and not in a good way. Like, literally the second he says one sentence, even before he says a sentence, you know this guy is evil. Like, it is just, and he's such a massive red herring too, because he's clearly like not threatening enough to be the full villain, you know. So, but they try to trick you into thinking maybe he is for a little while. Ugh, not good. And oh my god, there's a scene with him that I have to talk about. So early on, he's trying to basically intimidate the wife while she's alone in the house into buying new locks from him. And he's trying to do that thing villains do in a movie where they do the like intimidating lean, you know, they like sort of like lean up on a wall, like tower over this poor woman and make her feel intimidated, but there's no wall around him. So he tries to do it with the ceiling instead, but he can't really reach it, so he has to like go on his tiptoes and reach all the way up, and he's like barely grazing the ceiling with his fingers. And it doesn't look intimidating at all. It just looks like really goofy. That was too funny. You know, that's something where like that must have been direction. That must have been the director being like, oh, you should try to like lean on the ceiling, not realizing how stupid it would look. Oh man. Anyways, at this point, I kind of already went into spoilers, but I'm gonna call it now. We're going into official full spoiler zone. Because my real complaints, so far this has just been surface stuff, my real complaints have to do with the plot. Okay, so the reveal of what's happening, why the doors are opening on their own, and the furniture's moving, and the cat's appearing outside the house despite the doors all being locked and stuff. You know, such innocuous things. The explanation is that there's a dude living in their walls, basically. He's been living there from 3 families ago. He killed his whole family because they wanted to send him to a mental institution and disguised it as his father killing them instead. So they just took away the bodies and never found him, and he's been living in the walls ever since, killing the families that move in. And so first of all, this is like already been done way better by 3 different movies. So there is Housebound, which did it first. I want to say in 2014. It's a New Zealand movie that's sort of a horror comedy, but it's a really good horror comedy. It's one of those horror comedies that, like, when it wants to actually be scary, it can actually be kind of scary. You know, it's not like a full-on goof. So that's really good. And that's like literally the exact same plot as this, except years earlier. Like a dude living in the walls. You know, he's even skinny and pale and, you know, this like creepy looking dude who's got like his own little carved out den in the attic of the house, disguised and all this stuff, with a whole elaborate system of holes in the various walls to travel around. It's done the same way exactly, except this movie has none of the humor and none of the craft or the anything good. Then there's the movie The Boy, which is an American movie, which had an angle that there was basically like a possessed doll, and then the reveal, spoilers, was that the doll wasn't possessed at all. It was a normal doll, and it was actually a guy living in the walls that was sneaking out and moving the doll around to make it seem like it was possessed. Again, very similar plot to this, except much better shot and has the interesting gimmick of the doll aspect, which this doesn't have. This has just nothing. And then the third one is a movie called Havenhurst, and all these movies came out before this one. And Havenhurst, again spoilers, is a movie about, it's basically the same thing, but it's in an apartment building instead of a house, where there's a guy who travels throughout the walls, and that one's even crazier because they have like it's almost like sci-fi. He's got these crazy mechanisms with these big gears to like leverage him really quickly throughout the apartment building, and that one's kind of goofy. And I'm not even saying like Housebound's actually a good movie. The Boy and Havenhurst are like middling, but they're definitely better than this. This, Within, doesn't even have a good name, is it's just not good. There's nothing interesting to it. When you compare it to all those other movies with the same plot that came before it, and this one comes out and it has nothing to add to the discussion, you know? I also want to get into a couple plot holes. So, they do this kind of double twist at the end where you think the killer has been shot, and they take him away on a stretcher, and then it's basically revealed that actually the guy that was shot was the boyfriend, and the killer's still in the house. Because the boyfriend had previously been abducted and disappeared, right? So there's multiple issues with this. Like, to make this twist happen, they had to basically destroy their own plot, because, first of all, the boyfriend, the reason he gets shot is because he runs out of the darkness at a police officer who has his gun out and is, like, on edge waiting to look for the killer. Like, why would you do that? It makes no sense. He, like, runs out screaming at him. He doesn't say, help me, or, like, I'm not the killer, please help me, or anything. He just runs out screaming as if he's about to attack the police officer, so obviously gets shot. So that makes no sense, because he's shown earlier being an otherwise normal guy. And then also, why didn't the killer kill him? It makes no sense. Why did the killer keep this guy alive, and where was he keeping him alive, and for what purpose? Like, the whole thing is ridiculous. He hasn't kept anyone else alive. He's killed everyone else just through and through. Also, the killer is like basically a superhuman in this movie. Like he has like a lasso made out of like I think it's like an extension cord, and he like lassos a dude around the neck from like across the room, and then like with one arm like rips him up into the ceiling, snapping his neck. It's like he straight up has super strength. So that was kind of goofy. Oh, and then at the end, this is one of the funniest lines. At the end, when the cop comes in and is like comforting the girl and all that stuff, he says, "You'd be surprised how much this happens." And then at the end, when the movie finishes, before the credits start, like a quote comes up that says like, you know, the amount of people being caught living in other people's houses unnoticed has gone up recently or something. It's like they're trying to turn it into like a PSA. Oh my god, like the cop says you'd be surprised how much this happened. You'd be surprised how much what happened, that a dude lives in your walls for 40 years with an elaborate system to travel around, sneaking out at night to eat your food and murdering the families over and over again without ever getting caught. Like, oh my god, just absurd. Anyways, overall, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10. You know, you gotta leave room for the stuff that's really, truly horrible, because honestly, outside of the off-axis thing I mentioned and the weird color grade, this movie's totally fine technically. It's really just the horrible plot, and it's the fact that it's completely derivative and has no original or interesting qualities whatsoever. That brings it down to the 3, but you need to be technically defunct as well to go all the way down to a 1. So 3, solid, there you go.